Chief Coroner's report has found that substance abuse known as huffing has killed 63 people in the last 12 years. The majority were teenagers. So how should the country address the problem?
Solvent abuse in one form or another has been around for a long time, but a number of recent deaths, including that of 12-year-old Darius Claxton on Friday night, have sparked calls for a fresh approach to the problem.
It was really sad to see him die. I tried to give him CPR and stuff, but it didn't work.
One thing that's been quite clear to us is that there's a real ignorance or a real naivety.
It really is, it's just the tip of the iceberg, and it's a big iceberg. It's again a similar phenomenon I think we're seeing with suicide. The completed suicides are but part of the picture, particularly for females. The attempts, the self-harming, are a big part underneath.
Often they've started quite young in their life using solvents, the age of 5 or 7 years old, and they've used. They might have floated on to another substance as they've aged, but for very few of them they've come back to solvents as a drug of choice, as their thing. Sometimes it's around cost, as in it's cheaper to get, it's easier to get, and it gives them, they just have a choice around it. Some people like alcohol, some people like cannabis. Some of these people like the effect that solvents give them.
So our focus has to be early intervention and prevention, and really it's the two phases of reducing demand and limiting supply. And if you think the early prevention's about reducing demand, so this is giving kids something else in their lives, identifying those most vulnerable kids early, making sure before they get disengaged that they're getting supports. Too often in our society, those with the greatest vulnerability become the least visible until a crisis hits.
He was 14. He, from what I can gather, he'd only been doing it for like a few days, and was unaware of what was actually happening till I found him. It'd be like, like I said, get that photo of Nathan that the police took and put it in their face and say, well, do you want this happening to you? Some days, yeah, I still have trouble dealing with it. Some days I just think, oh yeah, Nathan will be through the door shortly, even though he's not. It's just, I just wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy.
I think people need to understand that harm reduction, yes, it's about informing people about how to manage the risks associated with what it is they're doing. So harm reduction being the don't have a cigarette while you're using petrol, right through to leave windows open if you're going to use LPG gas, ensure that you don't have a heat on, all those basics, through to harm reduction is also about being drug-free or abstinence. So, we need to walk people along that continuum. Some will be able to go straight to the being drug-free and being able to manage that, and others it'll take more time, but we want to keep them alive. We don't want to have deaths that are preventable occurring because of using these sorts of substances.
The context to all of our drug work has been this idea that the best way to fix the problem is to make sure the drugs aren't out in the community. It hasn't worked so well. Hasn't worked with alcohol, hasn't worked with cannabis. It's where actually schools out on methamphetamine, but if someone really wants their fix, they're going to get it. So let's not throw those strategies out. But fundamentally what we're dealing with is health and social issues that are going to be best addressed through health and social responses.
The challenges has been with volatile solvents is that to some extent it's everybody's business, therefore it becomes nobody's business. So that we actually need to be fostering some sort of coalitions with lead agencies. If you look at the bad things that happens to our young people, they tend to clump in the same group of people. So it's developmentally determined activities like road traffic, drowning, substance use, sexual dangerous behaviour, workplace, recreational accidents. So we need a coordinated, developmentally focused injury prevention team for our young people. And one of the offshoots of that is to say, well, how do we get our local coalition to talk about volatile solvent abuse?
I didn't like the way the newspaper portrayed Nathan when he died. That made me furious because you know, we'd put so much, you know, work, we'd built such a strong friendship, and it was almost like they portrayed him as this kid that ran amok and was, you know, a rioter, you know, and just caused trouble all the time. And I think they sort of got a one-sided perspective of it based on his death. I think we've got to realise now it's a reality. It's what's happening. You know, the more we sort of keep it in the dark, you know, the more we don't talk about it, the more kids are going to die. You know, the more people aren't going to know what the hell it is. You know, I didn't know till Nathan was well dead what it was. So I think we've got to realise that it might be a touchy subject, it might be one we don't want to talk about, it might be something parents don't even want to comprehend, but it's happening, and it's reality, it's what's going on. The same way that kids are drinking the way they're drinking, you know, we don't really want to talk about it, but it's what's happening, so we've got to do it.